So first, thank you very much for calling me. Because as I said, limitations, I don't see the word, say, conservative society being used anywhere. Not very easily, no?
Yes, sir.
And therefore, if you are doing it, even if you are just 6 or 8 of it, it's all right. It's a very good thing. It's better to be honest than to pretend. Which is one of the core things of being a conservative, is that your thoughts are based on reality as it is, and not as reality as you would like it to be. So you're rooted in life. You're rooted very much in life. Unfortunately, in India, and when I was growing up, and same today, in academic circles particularly, the word conservative was a term of abuse, gali, And since I've done one master's in the USA, everybody talks about tolerance and diversity, and you ask them, so how many people in your faculty are non-liberal? And there's a shocked silence, as if there's not a question you should be asking. I remember somebody on the Iraq War talking, TV program, very good program, very balanced program. They said, so who was speaking in favor? They said, no, nobody was. We were all against it. They said, where is the balanced discussion? I'm not in favor of the war in Iraq. I thought it was a bad war. But the fact is, when you talk about balance means trying to flesh out an issue in its totality. Now, for those on the left, in the days when I was young, the term liberal and conservative had a lot of overlap, and both were abused. Now, of course, there's a new word which has emerged called the left liberal, which is a very bad word, because the left actually cannot be liberal and liberal cannot be left, actually. But since everybody is confused, in fact, the left had a term for all of us. It was called the running dogs of imperialism. See, left has this very beautiful thing, which now the liberals have picked up: do not engage in debate. If you engage in debate, you will come up short. Therefore, deride, abuse, run down the person, question his or her morality, do anything, do everything except engage, Things hopefully are changing somewhat. But as I said, conservatism practically did not exist, and even today, it exists not in a formal sense, which is not actually too bad. It is not actually too bad. On one hand, every commentator, and I'm just reading some article, I can't remember which one, which says Indian people are conservative people. Indian society is conservative society. I'm not saying whether it's right or wrong. So on one hand, everybody accepts that Indians are broadly conservative, and yet nobody comes up and says, Rajaji was the last person to say I'm a conservative, literally, and now Swapan Das Gupta says it loud and clear. But otherwise, nobody stands up and says I'm a conservative. Why is this? And this has been bothering me. So though you have asked me to speak on Vajpayee's contribution to Indian conservatism, I'll come to that. I thought broadly, since we are a close group, we can be frank with each other. Why is it that there are very few self-declared conservatives in public life or in academia? And I could think of 4 reasons, and this is just my gut feeling, so please disagree with me. One is that the association with colonial rule, Winston Churchill. So that itself is a terrible thing to happen. Labour or the left was seen as those who gave India freedom. It is actually complete bullshit. It's actually bullshit, because George Orwell, who was left, he left the Indian police service, genuinely left without being communist. He was anti-communist, but definitely left of center in British politics. During the war, did a TV program for BBC, and he was most puzzled on why would India want independence. Clement Attlee we all love. Clement Attlee was member of the cabinet mission which came, which effectively created circumstances for India's independence in a very distorted manner, leading to partition. And yet somehow we feel that the left was good for us, and Ramsay MacDonald was initially a Labour Prime Minister, not at all in favor of India. But somehow the genuine Lasky. Now, who could be a better English socialist academic than Harold Lasky? And Lasky says colonial rule is very bad, we should get out of India. Not that the Indians are capable of ruling themselves, but because colonialism is bad by itself, we should get out of India. So his reasoning was the British reasoning. It was not from your point of view. Be very clear. Huh? The second is that the impact, even today, if somebody gets a prize recognized outside, we feel very happy, which is a good thing. But if you have the chap of the West on you, you're seen as very good. So Indian intellectuals also are happy to look westwards, northwestwards, westwards, whichever way. And therefore, obviously, Western intelligentsia being so strongly anti-conservative, very, very strongly anti-conservative, that we also instinctively like to go along with them. We did have, it's very peculiar that the Western intelligentsia is anti-left, where the West is seen as conservative. In the Cold War, we had a tense relationship with the West. So we are anti-West, and therefore we are anti-conservative. But we want the help from the Western intellectual. So it's a very, very awkward kind. It's not a very, what should I say, logical circumstances, but that's the way it is. We like that charm. Also, and this is what I said, don't worry about not having too many people. See, conservatism is not about promising you an utopia. It's not about bringing out revolutionary change. It's much easier to rally people around, listen, there is utopia on the horizon. Let's work together and we'll reach there, right? It's easy to rally people. Good slogan. Conservatism obviously lacks that slogan, you know. In fact, Roger Scruton makes that lovely point. What was it? Something about don't enter into the arguments because then you're no more a conservative kind of a thing. You know, because, and he uses this lovely expression, lovely English word, which today is a gally against prejudice. Now, prejudice means a gally, right? But prejudice comes from origin is something I instinctively believe in, and I don't need evidence to support it in that sense, because that belief comes from my centuries and thousands of years of internalization, right? The community values and wisdom, which are actually transmitted also through the genes. So it's a scientific basis to it also. But now, of course, prejudice means something quite different, you know. So because you're not about to give people the moon tomorrow, so therefore rally around me, it is difficult. And lastly, of course, in India is that Swatantra Party, which was genuinely conservative in many senses, got associated with the Maharajas, the big industrialists who were seen as villains. So again, that stigma is there, that these are the party of the haves. The reality is quite different, actually. You know? The reality is that the haves are not conservative at all. As Raghuram Rajan, who otherwise I have many disagreements with, very rightly wrote an article or a book basically saying that the biggest enemy of capitalism are the capitalists, you know, because they are the ones who are a closed group who don't want entering of others into the society, you know. But what is Indian conservatism? What is it that we seek to conserve in a society that is so unequal, has seen tremendously oppressive social systems, is still a poor society? So do we believe in the status quo? Or is there something worth conserving? So unless we identify these values, and that's where Vajpayee comes in. Against that, where do you fit in somebody like Vajpayee? Now, Vajpayee's problem in that sense is, and I was very close to him and I'm writing something on him, is that he never again expressed himself as a conservative, you know, never. Nobody in India does, you know. But lots of things he does which was actually adds to the conservative idea. So I'll come to that. Now the trouble, and I said, that is why I said, what is it that we seek to conserve? All that is good in our systems, all that is good in our traditions, our institutions. Now the easiest way to destroy any society, and that is what somebody like Mao understood it instinctively, Stalin understood it instinctively, is to demolish that society's collective memory. And therefore today, even if you go to any part of Russia or the Stans, the leadership, the Kazakh leadership, the Tajik leadership, is far more comfortable in a Russified world than an actual Kazakh word or a Tajik word. They don't even speak the languages properly, you know. So you demolish, and those who still survive, you make them feel small. So as a result, the Russian defense minister, Sergei Sigoyu, he is Buddhist from the Mongolian border. But when he became high up in the Russian hierarchy, he had to publicly declare that, no, I am a Russian, I am a Christian. You know? I have nothing against Christianity. But in Russia, Christianity is identified with Russian nationalism. Christianity is not a religion for them. They don't go to church. But Christianity is Russian nationalism for them, right? So you destroy the collective memory of a people. So these are, but our collective memory is real, it's tangible, it may not be codified, and it is definitely not what Anderson wants, what believers imagined. No. This concept of imagined communities may exist in artificial countries. See, when you confuse a nation and a nation state, yes, India, the nation state, was born in that sense on 26 January 1950. Fair enough, that's a valid point. So when Irfan made a speech the other day, he was being very smart. You know? But India as a nation does not go back to 1950. Just doesn't go back to 1950, you know. Now in the case of Italy, Italian nationalism, Garibaldi, Mazzini, Cavour, they created Italy as a country. Italy never existed as a country, not even in imagination, which India did. India didn't exist as a political entity, fine. But India, in our imagination, in our writings, in our philosophies, always existed. Italy did not. Venice was different from Naples, and they hated each other. They found nothing in common with each other. These guys created, and once Italy nation was created, to sustain the nation, they had to create Italian nationalism. In our case, it was Indian nationalism which created the Indian nation state. Indian nation was there. Therefore, from Indian nation flowed Indian nationalism. From Indian nationalism flowed the Indian national state. And this is something to be understood, you know. And this, people will subscribe to it without understanding that when they subscribe to it, they are moving out of the rigid framework of liberalism or the left. But that they don't understand, that while they are actually doing so, they are moving out of it. That does not mean that we should feel self-satisfied or feel that nothing should change, or that we are or we ever were an ideal society. There I disagree with many people, you know. Yes, we draw on our traditions, we are happy with them, we draw on them, but we also recognize their limitations in terms of the inequities, in terms of many other things, and we also understand their limitations helping us solve today's problems. They are not meant to solve today's problems. They are meant to give you a base on which to solve today's problems in conformity with the times, right? So all those who today want to go back to the days of the Prophet, the Salafists in Islam, for example, I want to live life as the Prophet lived. Fine. Will you do without the internet? No. Will you do without a car? No. Right? So you have to, whether you like it or not, you cannot subscribe to a feeling that, yes, I'll live exactly like my ancestors did. You can't. But what is it that your ancestors gave you that gives you the confidence to face today's world? So you must critique, you must be self-reflective. The essential of conservatism is being self-reflective, you know. So instead of blaming others for my shortcomings, look within myself, look within my society. It's not that others have not caused you harm. Of course others have caused you harm. But only to be obsessed about the others, you know. Like, again, many societies do it well, others don't do it well. I've lived in Afghanistan for years, and they are talking about the British impact on Afghanistan in the year 2006 or 7. And they're discussing the Battle of Maiwand, which happened in 1870, and how the British were outmaneuvered, and therefore they're taking revenge on it. I said, no, Brits are terrible fellows, I can assure you of that, but it's not because of what happened in 1870. It's happened what is now, you know. But the society's ability to sometimes look within itself for our shortcomings is not there. And that is where I think, as people interested in developing the idea of conservatism, we must be prepared to push the envelope in being self-critical. In a happy-critical, not in the sense of being disparaging about ourselves, but self-critical in terms of what is it that what is it that is less, what is that we need to change. But the change we are looking for comes from discussion, building consensus, largely, not always. Sometimes you require strong change, but generally you require incremental change, not revolutionary change. You do not want revolutionary change because, as I said, any such large-scale destruction that a revolution means actually leaves the disadvantaged worse off. It is not the elite who suffer in a revolution, please remember that. It is the disadvantaged, the socially and the economically disadvantaged who suffer in a revolution. Because they do not have the social and economic support systems. They do not have that. Elite or parts of the elite are able to regroup, and the absence of traditional inhibiting factors. See, traditional society has many inhibiting factors, socially acceptable norms. In a revolution, those are gone. So in the absence of the inhibiting factors, 99% of revolutions descend into totalitarianism, descend into violence. So actually the change you're looking for from a revolution is actually not there. And the Soviet Union was a classic case of it. The very famous Soviet leader called Mr. Brezhnev, Leonid Brezhnev, who was there for a long, long time. And like all good Soviet leaders, he had this very nice private bungalow. Russian word for it is DACHA, Dacha, outside Moscow in the heart of the jungle. Beautiful. So he took his mother to see it, to show his mother that, look, your son has become such a powerful man. And the joke, of course, is, after the Russian Revolution, there was civil war in Russia, the Reds on one side and the Whites on the other side. So obviously the Reds won, the Whites who opposed the revolution were wiped out. So his mother looks at it very impressed and asks him, Leonid, what happens if the Reds now come? Have the Whites won because the revolutionary leaders obviously enjoyed life which was much better than what would have been otherwise, And therefore, the alternative we posit is to use corrective mechanisms available to bring about change. Most societies do have a self-correcting mechanism inbuilt into it, which is why they survive. Those societies do not have an inbuilt mechanism, will not survive, will collapse. The greater the acceptability, the more sustainable the change. Of course, when faced with imminent danger, you don't have time. You will take strong measures to take decisions, but that's an exception, not the norm. The norm is definitely that you work towards greater acceptability of change. And that is why coming to India in that sense, very specifically India, the famous lines which you always quote, what is it? Ekam sat vipra bahuda vadante. Now basically is that, forget the meaning, is that nobody has the monopoly of truth. That is something we have to accept. So your way, your truth is as valid as my truth. We shall discuss, we shall argue. Charvakas are wiped out, but the theories have survived in the writings of the critics. So the critics said, you are saying this, 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 I refute to this, this, this. So you are accepting that you have a valid point of view. It is just that I don't agree with it. That doesn't mean I am right and you are wrong. From my point of view, what I am doing is right. But I am open to change, I am open to correction. But through a process of discussion and argument, not through violent means, not forcibly. That is not. So we will not impose, nor shall we discriminate. Now, a lot is said about Nalanda, but most of the people who are funding Nalanda universities by then were Hindu kingdoms. They had no problem funding a Buddhist institution. Because we will not discriminate. We will not, Indian conservatism and economic thinking has been a bit confused at times because these labels of liberal and conservative are so Western that we tend to apply them through Western eyes. Now, yes, a conservative by and large should believe in markets as the most successful coordination device in an economy. You need a coordination device that allocates resources most efficiently. Markets do that. Subject to, even Adam Smith said, two things he said. One, he said, when the butcher and the baker and this supplies me, It is because there's selfish motive, but it still helps me. But he also said, do not leave these people alone by themselves. Then they shall conspire against the public good. So you accept the concept of certain amount of regulation in the economy. Conservation is about human agency, which is why non-confrontational human agency, non-antagonistic, which is why markets are the best, because you are a free agent to act in the way that you want to act. Any form of planning is necessarily a top-down effort. Any top-down effort is an imposition, and by definition will try to bring about uniformity. Otherwise you can't measure. How do I allocate resources? How do I measure outputs? You are bringing about certain methods of frameworks, top-down methods. And adding it further, to sustain planning and to bring out uniformity, a certain amount of totalitarianism will come in. I cannot imagine an economic planned society which does not have a strong dose of totalitarianism. There are also economic arguments why it's a very bad idea, but I'll leave that aside. But it's not about market fundamentalism in that sense, free market, not fundamentalism, because there are social assets and features in our societies, in India. I don't know about others, I'm sure they also have it. I can't speak on their behalf, but what little I know about India, I can. These social assets and features are not amenable to markets. Belief systems, values, ethics, aesthetics, and more expensive painting need not be a painting that I like, right? So, while markets are very important for economic reasons, there are enough factors in our life which are non-economic, and we have to accept that, If you reduce everything down to market forces, then you lose a lot of what you really want to conserve, what you think will sustain you. Now, Indian state is a very, historically, pre-colonial, I'm talking about pre-colonial Indian state. There was no divine right of kings till the Mughals claimed to be the shadow of Allah on earth. There was no divine right of kings. Kings needed social acceptance. Maharaja Pratap was not the eldest son. His elder brother was supposed to succeed his father. But the society said, no, we will not accept him. So Rana Pratap then, being a younger brother, became the... And it's across Indian history. It's across. Social acceptance does not mean voting. It just means they don't have open hostility. If open hostility, there is no social acceptance. It's always been a limited state, very limited. But what is the main purpose? And enough writings is there, not just Arthashastra. It's to uphold dharma, which cannot be translated. Roughly, justice, uphold contracts, injustice should not be there, and the Indian state, down to the 18th century kingdoms which came up. Again, history is badly taught. 18th century, 20 new kingdoms came out all over India. All these kingdoms' full-time job was to do, the World Bank now tells you, promote economic activity. Because they realize, which Arthashastra says, economic activity means more revenues. So if the kings want money, they must be promoting good economics. Good economic activities. So you facilitate economic activities like agriculture, manufacturing, trade, but do not control it. So you're not laying down prices, you're not doing this. But, and again, centuries before Adam Smith, what were the Mauryas doing? They are a controller of currency. See, today we know the rupee is a rupee. But those days where people could literally mint their own coins, the purity of the coin was important. So you need a control of currency so that people are not cheated. If you get a debased currency, economy collapses. You have high inflation. So I have a good currency, control of currency. Arthashastra says you have a control of weights and measures. So the shopkeeper doesn't cheat you. The buyer doesn't cheat the seller. The small farmer is not cheated by the merchant. So you have a control of navigation. So people, public resources like roads and navigation, roads and rivers are available to all. Nobody monopolizes it. So it's a very limited state, but the state which is facilitating economic development and is not getting into social issues or belief systems. Very clear from the beginning that's none of the state's business which God the subject. As long as believing in that God is not challenging the legitimacy of my rule, you're free to believe in your God or not to believe in any God. Your problem. Social system is your own. And if you're jumping from 3rd century, 4th century before Common Era to Tilak's opposition to the age of consent bill, which shows up as a very negative factor. Why should Tilak oppose girls of 6 years old getting married? Tilak says no. He says every youth of Aryavart should work hard, really work hard, to ensure that young girls are not married, right? So he was not the one saying Shastras allow young girls to be married, therefore they should be married. No, he's saying no. We will strive to prevent this happening. This is a social evil. He says the British government has no right to get into this field. It's our business. It's our society, it's our business, you know. So king will not enter into my family. The king will not police my bedroom, you know. But the difference is, and this is where I think in India we must be very clearly about it. A lot of it sounds just like traditional liberal policies. Why do I say that India we are not in that sense? Because unlike the Western liberal, which is all about the individual, only about the individual, Indian conservatism also thinks about society. So it's not socialism which says only society. It's not liberalism which says only individual. We say both. We say there is no inherent contradiction between a community's wisdom and individual agency. Deen Dayal Upadhyay's 4 lectures, which are wrongly translated, he used it himself, so I can't blame others for it. Ekatma, it's not a vad, it's a darshan, which means a worldview, you know. Ism reduces it in that sense. It brings it because ism gives you a framework which is a rigid framework. And any framework over a period of time literally becomes, what should I say, self-reinforcing. It doesn't allow individual agency. So Ekatma Manavvad, I prefer Ekatma Manav Darshan, you know. Community wisdom is very important to us. But individual, community, state are different entities. Individual and the community is organically linked. The state is a creation of the community. It is not the boss of the community, it's a creation of the community. So you accept the role of the state in the economy, but only because the private sector was not allowed to grow and therefore there will be place for it. But you're not really fully thought through in that sense, you know. Now Vajpayee's this thing is, the public image is 2. One is the image which is very strong, that is strong liberal, a very, very strong liberal. Having known him personally very closely, obviously I don't know what was in his mind, but what I could decipher, very, very deeply Indian in his outlook, in his thinking. So if you read his poetry, for example, let me just, sorry, very, very deeply conscious of being an Indian, you know, and yet liberal in the sense that open to the world, you know. So very proud of Indian traditions, always talked about change through dialogue, not confrontation, respecting diverse point of views, and real Indian universalism in terms of respecting diversity and not expecting uniformity. And here I think I would link him to Gandhi's famous lines, you know, that my doors and windows are kind of open to, but I shall not be swept over by them. And I think that is very important, you know, the ability, and that I think is the difference between, and we must understand that when you think about any thought processes, philosophies, ways of looking at the world, whether you like it or not, you cannot de-link the community from territoriality. These thought processes, in that sense, were uniquely Indian. And no harm in saying that. That doesn't mean I think others were bad. It's just that this is the way we think. This is the way we are. And once you have that internalized in you comfortably, which it had in Gandhi and in Vajpayee very strongly, then you're able to face the world with that much greater confidence. You don't have to prove to them. I do not have to prove to the American that I'm as American as he is or she is. I may not know which football team or whatever baseball team is doing well in America. Yesterday I was exchanging some thoughts on immigration, Trump. I said, I don't know enough about Trump to comment on Trump. So frankly, what is happening in America interests me, but not beyond the point, right? Not saying they're bad. Is that your way of dealing with it different from my way of dealing with it? That's all, So in that sense, Vajpayee's very, very strong Indianness. And this, if you read some of his poetry, it's very strongly comes across, He enabled him, when India became nuclear, which was his decision to become nuclear, to explain to the Western world, which was up in arms, how dare these poor Indians who can't afford 2 meals a day go nuclear. He was able to explain to them why historically our worldview is limited to India only. And therefore, what we are doing is to protect ourselves and not project our power beyond, So that is something, and that is a thought which runs into Indian thought from the beginning, The only time the Cholas sent their army was once for trading purposes, that we are very conscious of the territory of India, and therefore this, what we are doing, is related to that, to defense of that, He was able to deal with the USA based on that, and I had seen it at close hands. Again, to explain that the Indian worldview does not look at the world in terms of competing East versus West, communism versus the free world. It does not look at the world in that sense, because what you do for you is yourself. This is my area of influence. These are my broad thoughts, and respect me for that, and I respect you for what. And unless the two are clashing, then it's a matter of resolution. Otherwise, it's not for me to judge you, it's not for you to judge me. It can sound a bit at times like being almost cynical in its realism, but it is not. When it comes to the crunch, you are able to then assert your values, but you don't go about tom-tomming your values. This is not how we are, It enabled him to deal with China and with Pakistan again and again, even though he failed on that attempt, again and again. And every case, I think, it flowed from his very strong views on what is India, very, very strong views. As I said, the word Hindu, unfortunately, has become now a controversial word. We don't use it. And I was, as a graduate student, traveling across India with a group of Americans. And almost every person we met, most were left of center, started their presentation to Americans by saying, I'm not a practicing Hindu. So when the third of them said so, I said, excuse me, what does it mean to be a practicing Hindu? For me, I try to follow the path of the Buddha. But if somebody tries this on my hand, I'm equally happy with it. It does not bother me. I don't try to, So I don't understand what this is. Be it as may, Vajpayee was definitely very proud of his heritage, and also always recited the story when he went to Ghazni in Afghanistan in 1978 as the foreign minister. The Ghazni mosque is a very big mosque, and they showed him that the steps of the mosques are constructed of stones from the temple which was broken. So that, now this, again, I'm not blaming Islam for it. Any king who conquers your territory or forces you to believe in him will try to show that my God is stronger than your God could not protect you. Fine. But in his mind, Zehen mein jo kehte hain na, he had that written on him, the stones where people stamp on it every day, So that is very much there, And which is why it made him extremely uncomfortable with religious conversion. Like Gandhi again. Gandhi was extremely uncomfortable with conversion, Fine, you're a Christian, you're a Muslim, fine, it's all right, nothing, no discrimination against you. But don't go about aggressively attacking others in preaching, which is what does. You have your space, I have my space. But it's in economics also that Vajpayee left a very strong mark in the real sense of the term. to free the economy, to reform the state dominance of the economy, and therefore to have a limited government in that sense. So the earlier governments were doing what was called disinvestment of public sector, which was a fraud, it's a genuine fraud. Basically asking one public sector to pick up 10% shares in the other public sector, the government gets the money. But there is no change in the attitude towards the public sector unit. It still functions as an outpost of the government. So they actually went in for privatization. The ministry's name was changed from disinvestment to Ministry of Privatization. And a lot of strong. But initially, of course, privatization is troublesome because people do not expect it to happen, or they think there will be a fallback, a pushback, which did happen, next government. But now, again, it has resumed after a long time. The telecom policy. We had a telecom policy which was 94, you can say hindsight was bad, because the premises were very bad. And as a result, the telecom penetration in India was very, very low, and the rates were very high. And the two fed each other. Penetration was low because the rates were high. 16 rupees a minute for a phone call. A minute, 16 rupees a minute, receiving or outgoing. Because there was not enough market, the rates were high, costs were high. That had to be broken. The company on the verge of defaulting and collapsing. With a very great bottom-up approach of consultation, but 40,000 responses were received all over the country. A new telecom policy was brought in, which made regulation much lighter, and we shifted from fixed cost to profit sharing. If today this is everywhere, the first big step was taken in 1999. In really, I said, and that is what I said, people confuse conservatism with looking at the haves. No, this is basically empowering the have-nots so that they could have greater agency, they could access the world much better. Today, you can't imagine in the colonies of Delhi, sabji wala on a thela without a phone. It has suddenly changed his or her life. Or the lady who goes house to house cleaning utensils, be it as it may. Her ability to use the phone gives her much greater income. You know, she can adjust, accommodate. Other one was to think of India again as one large market, and therefore we had the highway project, Golden Quadrilateral. So Jyoti, while you may be upset with the trucks on your road, if there were no trucks on the road, the cost of living would have been 10 times higher. No, I'm not saying trucks on the next to your house is good. No, I'm not saying that. I'm merely saying that, you know, Golden Quadrilateral. But then realizing that India is just not big industry, which is an important part of India. It's also these tens of thousands of small producers in our villages. And therefore, half the money went into what was called the Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana. And Lalu would say, why do you want roads in the villages? Cars will ply. No, sir. If you have roads in the villages, buses will ply, small trucks, LCVs will ply. Which means the farmer who has very limited produce can now actually go to a market outside his own village, her own village to sell it. That the labor who gets low wages in her own village can hop onto a bus, travel 20 kilometers, get double the income and come back. Giving human agency is a very, very, the whole principle of conservative thought is that human beings have agency. This agency must be respected. And therefore, there are any disabilities attached to it, those disabilities have to be removed. You know, it's not causing a revolution, it's only empowering you, making you a freer agent, you know. So the Gram Sadak Yojana and the Quadrilateral, and there were many others, Kisan Credit Card, I will not go into that, on the health scene also. And also in the genuine sense of being federal, talks with Bangladesh, Sheikh Hasina's government was there, Jyoti Basu was involved in it. It gave much greater confidence to West Bengal that India is not making a deal with Bangladesh at the cost of West Bengal. Also gave confidence to Bangladesh that West Bengal is on board and you have a long border, you need that comfort level, you know. So I think these are the kind of various things which I think in my mind made Vajpayee, because to me conservatism is extremely comfortable with change, incremental change. It's not reflexive opposition to all change. It is not being a reactionary, I'll oppose change for the sake of opposing it. No, it is not that. But it's also not that I shall force change even on the unwilling at all cost. Yes, in emergency, national emergency, massive public safety, obviously you have to impose change. There's no doubt about it. But I said that is the exception and not the rule. So I think I'll end with that, saying that I think in my mind, Vajpayee, though he never articulated it, in his own way, in his social work, in his social attitudes, in his political work, we didn't talk about his ability to work very comfortably with the DMK, Karunanidhi, or with Nayanar of CPM in Kerala, very high comfort level. It arose from the fact that I shall respect you for who you are and not what I want you to be. And I think that to me, and therefore, based on reality as it is, not on some abstract principles, not on some utopia down the road, that was what he was, and that's why I thought I'll bring this to your notice. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for this very enlightening speech. I would just record a few of my observations on the nature of Indian conservatism. First of all, the origins of Indian socialism, it existed in a kind of sort of consensus. If you look at the Bombay Plan, the Bombay Plan itself has recorded, like, it had the full support of the whole Chamber of Commerce from every major province.
Correct.
So it is only in the 1970s that I believe that it gets an ideological orientation. It used to be a consensus plan. I mean, the whole world at that point of time believed that you need to make capacity, and therefore the heavy industries came into being. Having said that, I have always put this in, this is my thought, that if socialism is something scientific, then something scientific has to be falsifiable. So we have tried this, we have tried it diligently in various forms for 40, 60 years. And right now it's not working, even if it worked at some point in time. So, like that market orientation we are talking about, it's not an ideological start. It's simply something born out of evidence, something born out of empiricism. I mean, I would have been fairly happy to pursue a course of nationalization if it had shown to be something effective over a period of time, right? Also, I am very excited about another strand of thought that I see emerging into Indian conservatism. That is, as a market, as a social, as a factor in social emancipation. I record this work of this Dalit capitalist and all of them.
Correct.
I think some of his work I find to be extremely interesting insofar as he observes that the very act that a Dalit drives a tractor rather than works as a sharecropper changes his social status. If something as small as that can make such a difference, I mean, obviously the conditions of Dalit in Indian villages probably have remained the same for past 5,000 years or so, I do not know how long, right? So what would be the titanic changes that would be brought about by capitalism in this country? I mean, if somebody is arguing in terms of social change, somebody thinks that social change is something inherently good, social mobility is good, then I do not see how can somebody argue against the market forces now. Having said that, I agree with you that market, it should not end up being sort of anarchic position at some libertarian state, that I should have right to everything, I should have right to own a gun, I should have right to own an F-16, whatever can be owned, I should own, and whatever, right? So finally, even, I mean, human beings do not exist as individual points in a void. They exist in a social structure, right? So finally, even conservatism has to locate it within a society. So suppose if we cannot talk in terms of our traditions, if we cannot talk in terms of our community, if we cannot talk in terms of the nation, then what exactly are we, where exactly is that social and community part comes in, right? If you are talking in terms of people, but at the same time you reject identities. I mean, if you say that, I mean, imagine, everything is an imagined community. Right? Any sense of community, it's like no other being than human beings form any kind of community so far. It's a part of the human mind, right? So all communities are imagined. So if you have a, say, I always point out this, that if you you think that the Indian nation has come after the Indian nation state, then can you really say things like Bengali, Tamil, Telugu, so and so forth? Like if we did not have the linguistic reorganization of state, will there be a Tamil speaking Tamil Nadu, or will that be a large state speaking different language, or maybe parts of Tamil Nadu speak one kind of Tamil, parts of it speak other? Like historically, there never has been a Bengali speaking Bengal for a very long time, after 8th century or so, right? So how is it that you can question the Indian nationalism itself based on these identities? So these other identities are just as imagined as the nation, if that is the framework we're going for. So I would reject this line of argument together. For me, nation would be a starting point of my consciousness. And having said that, I think finally one lesson that everybody who hopes to achieve anything, I mean, I'm not even talking about public life, should learn to imbibe, as that you should not be scared to walk alone. As the song said,
Ekla chalo,
right? Only when you walk the path you believe in, that people will have the courage to follow, right? If you never go there, then there will never be a follower. Do not wait for a follower, just go walk on your convictions, right? So in India, if right now conservatism is not fashionable, I cannot care less. I will stand by my convictions. And also thank you, the students, for your attendance, and I hope that you will continue to engage with us in this endeavor. Thank you.
Who's regulating? I'll come to you.
Let's have
Yeah,
questions.
I can see two hands on this side, yeah.
Thank you. Sorry, I missed the first part, unfortunately. As someone with a German passport who's been educated in England, lived in Israel, in America, in Austria, now in India, I have a difficulty with any kind of national identity. The German passport is pretty meaningless to me, but I can identify with the 18th century culture of Goethe and so on. That is something I identify with. The present day Germany is totally alien to me. And in Germany, certainly in the German-speaking world, in the West maybe I could say conservative is used as a negative word.
Absolutely.
But that's conservative.
Yeah.
And immediately
Absolutely.
this is negative. So I'm someone who, I'm setting up a center for historic houses. That's my area of research. So I'm very interested in your, in your job. And as, you know, as someone who has an interest in traditional architecture, I could be described as conservative already, yes, because I like traditional building and I value that. And I think, especially in a day like this here, Sony Party, this is an extremely hideous town where I see no trace of the past. It could be anywhere. And I find it very disconcerting that you have architecture that is actually not liked by the people, but it's just a small minority of architects who build this steel, concrete, and glass structures that could be anywhere. You know, like, does this building engage with Haryana? Did the architect contemplate the traditional materials, the climate, and so on of Haryana? Or could this be anywhere? So I feel this is you know, a problem. So I'd be very sorry, this is a bit long-winded, but I'm very interested in, do you think there's a difference in what conservatism is when you go from country to country? Like when I went to the US and there are two parties only, either you are Republican or Democrat, I find it also very strange, you know, either you have to be this or that. And even, I mean, for instance, the military or death penalty, this would be something that is conservative. But although I'm culturally conservative, I do not, you know, believe in every value that is shared by a particular party. So the kind of conservatism, which is very capitalist in orientation in America, is very, very different from a European conservative that is more about protection of the countryside and traditional culture and so on. So I find that there's a huge kind of contrast. So now being in India, I don't know what conservatism is in India in comparison with the other types of conservatism. I don't know where my worldview, for instance, fits in there. And I'd be very interested in hearing your opinion on, you know.
One, of course, you know, I started by saying that unlike universal principles like liberalism or socialism, conservatism is very territorial. It is very territorial. Because basically, For us in India, and I'm not speaking on behalf of somebody in the West because I cannot. I simply lack that empathy to do so. Is that for us at least, it is on one hand about conservation, conserving what is good in our societies, in our traditions, in our cultures, in our institutions, while being reflexive enough, self-reflection enough to understand that the past was not perfect, that there were things in the past that may have validity, I don't know, but today it makes no sense for me. I'm prepared to, peel it away. But in the process of change, I'm not prepared to give up everything and impose an alien thing on me, which will leave me completely rootless, completely alienated. I wouldn't want to be completely alienated. What is the word Frantz Fanon used to use? But anyway, so, somebody who's completely no sense of belonging at all, At the same time, Indian conservatism is also about the balance between the individual and the community. It's not only about the individual, it's not only about the community, it is respecting the collective wisdom, the collective memory, I'm respecting that, but I'm also giving the individual the full agency to do what she or he wants to do, right? If you want to reject my traditions and say change over, fine with that, it's your choice, it's your choice. But it should not be at the cost of denigrating everything that I hold dear. Now in Europe, because of the wars, the word nationalism has a very negative meaning, extremely negative meaning in Europe. Not so in America, not so in Asia. For us in India, the word nation and the nationalism is a good word. It's not a pejorative, And therefore we are comfortable because our nationhood is not based on ethnicity, it's not based on language, which is why for a Westerner, it's so difficult to understand India as a country. But we speak different languages, Bengali, Tamil, Konkani, Assamese, whatever, right? It's not about any of the above. It's about a collective memory of India as a nation which exists. Now all our memories about India will describe India with the same words. Jambudweep, because we are located on the southern petal of the 4 petals, mythical, didn't exist, which is Himalayas on top, and the triangular peninsula occurs in Indian thought again and again and again. When Alexander came to India, he brought along this historian called Strabo. He brought along many intellectuals, Strabo was one of them. Strabo writes a book when he goes back, calls it Indica. So now, India was definitely different from Iran. So they knew that India is an entity. It's not a political entity. India is an entity, Indica. The Alexander meets some Indian monks, possibly Jain monks from the description, because they say they were not wearing any clothes. You know the story, right? Everybody knew what India was. Cunningham, writing about in 19th century, says, I'm amazed how even at that early part of their history, these guys knew they were Indians. The Indian National Congress, which was a body like this, today we are 11, 12, 15 people, used to meet once a year in big cities, start by hailing the Queen, Victoria was still around, thanking the British for bringing good governance to India, and then make small demands about entry of Indians in the civil services, creating a Viceroy's Council where Indians could be part of decision making. So very, very small things. In 1897, they made a request to the British Indian government, please do not deploy the Indian army outside the natural borders of India. Now Balochistan, which is part of Pakistan, now had just been conquered by the British. So that was for us the furthermost extent of India. I said, okay, thus far and no further. The furthermost Ashokan pillar is in Balochistan today, in Kharosthi language, local language. So languages and all did not matter to me. Any part of India you go, they will tell you, the Pandavas in their 1 year of exile in the forest were camping here. All over India you will go, huh? Ramayan, Ram and Lakshman and Sita have been to all over India, they were camping here. Shiv and Parvati have got married in every kasbah of India. Everywhere in India they will find a temple, this is where they got married. So, we have this very strong collective memory of who we are, So, we are comfortable with it. We never say that you accept our values. Not for a moment are we recommending to the others that you accept me as your superior, you accept my values. All we are saying is you live your life, I am living my life. We will have exchange with each other on equal terms, not a matter of size. We'll exchange on equal terms with you. I accept your point of view as valid for you. So therefore, for us, nationalism is this feeling. If it was based on ethnicity or a religious belief or language after Westphalia, then it can become problematic, right? Today, we are comfortable with it. If we have more Muslims in India than in Pakistan, fine. We're not asking them to go to Pakistan. They're Indians. We're comfortable with diversity. For us, diversity is not an issue. Extremely comfortable with diversity. But yet, when a Subramaniam Bharati from Tamil Nadu wants to seek solace, not knowing Hindi, he reaches Banaras and stays in Banaras. He does not see Banaras as out of his cultural realm. Tamil speaking Tamil, no. Very happy in Banaras.
Not everyone is happy with diversity. I think diversity for many people is a problem. I think difference for many people all over the world is a
Yes,
problem.
as I said, but not for us. That is why language diversity is fine.
What about last October and the Taj Mahal was supposed not to be of the part of the tourism brochure of the.
See, you can always cite one incident here, one incident there with people who have different.
Indian. I mean, there are these debates.
There would be, but it's not a major debate. Today, all those people will go to the Taj Mahal. When the visitors come, they will send to the Taj Mahal. I may be unhappy with the fact Mughals ruled India. Okay. That doesn't take away the fact that essentially, for us, Indian is somebody who accepts India as their home. Very comfortable with it. So many Westerners who come to India, settle down in India. How many people think of Vivekananda's Nivedita, Sister Nivedita, as anything but Indian? Nobody would even think of non-Indian. Or that lady with the mislaid with Mahatma Gandhi. For the moment they accept the Indian methods and Indian thought process, first they're Indian. It doesn't matter where they came from, So we are comfortable with diversity. There would be people who are not comfortable, which is fine. Overwhelmingly in our literature, even today, across the country, that feeling is, we don't have to be told we are an Indian. We know we are an Indian, So which is why nationhood, and we have to fight for nationhood. It was not a top-down effort. It was a large groundswell which came up, did create the modern nation state. It was not the nation state which created nationalism in India. It was the Indian national movement which created the Indian nation state. In a defective form, we have accepted it. We have accepted. It was a defective, it was distorted, it led to large-scale violence, massive uprooting of people, absolutely. It broke us into half, but we had to accept it. We accepted it. Because once we accept it, we don't look back, and we look forward. That is why Indian conservatism is very different from the West. We are looking forward because we are comfortable in our own skin.
But to some extent, there are also many parallels. Like I think, many descriptions of conservatism, like a root, a tree needs to have roots, otherwise you cannot live. I think, this is a kind of definition of conservatism that most conservatives would share all over the world.
But I will not expect a European conservative. When I look at Angela Merkel, I find her more left than the SPD.
Yes.
So, no, we are different. We are just different. He has been trying to ask for a long time.
So you mentioned during the lecture, we are a poor country and why do we need to maintain status quo? Also something you mentioned, the idea of liberalism is very West in India. And this is particularly when I see young generation, suppose people who are attending college first year, second year, they don't really dive into what Indian conservative is.
Yeah.
They're just very occupied with the Western notion.
Yeah.
Also, politically, I should not bring politics here, but people who claim to be a liberal in India, they want to maintain status quo. For example, they want to maintain caste system.
Yeah.
Because if they let it go, they are at a great political disadvantage.
Exactly.
So I think most of the people in India claim to be liberal because they believe why core India is a conservative society and this will make them look different.
They don't look
This
smart.
is what is happening to the majority. Everybody wants to be different and now they're saying we're liberal.
Actually, the word liberal itself in the West has undergone so much of a change I mean, John Stuart Mill, considered to be the classical liberal, Adam Smith, right? That very good economist, Ricardo, right? Today they are all considered conservative because the West liberals have moved from being liberals so much more to the leftwards now, Such changes happen everywhere. What I was saying was, my label, like the word dharma, cannot be translated into any language other than Indian languages. Similarly, I'm the languages of the Southeast Asia because of long influence of each other. The word law, does not exist in India. No Indian word, traditional word, has a word for law. Because we never needed to define law in that sense. We never had a codified system of laws. It is based in its own way on what the British did with laws, is through settlement of disputes based on natural justice, you develop precedents. So you're not sitting down and making law like the code of the man in Iraq, Hammurabi, that first, we did not sit down and make laws, thou shalt do this, thou shalt not do this. We did not believe. So, and therefore when you apply those labels, our labels there and their labels here, we have no word for religion. The closest we have is upasana paddhati, which means way of worship. It means way of worship. Because the concept of a religion is a very Abrahamic concept, as an example. So when you apply it to India, we do run into distortions. And that is why there's misunderstanding, We have no word for religion. We do not understand what is religion.
I just supply one more thing, that in India, you can be a Hindu and you can follow Charvak. Buddhism apparently does not believe in any God as such.
No. God is irrelevant.
God is irrelevant to them. So it's possible for you to have a religion without having a God. So they are probably not.
Or a founder.
Or a founder.
Or a theology.
Or a theology.
So where is the religion then?
It's not a religion in that sense.
So I'm very comfortable going to church. I've attended a lot of masses. I'm very comfortable going to a Muslim Sufi shrine. Because when I go there, it doesn't take away from my essential Indianness, my Indic. What was earlier called Hindu, now you can't use the word Hindu in public. You'll get trolled and you'll get, please. I was looking this side, my fault.
I think just forwarding the point which she made about religion and nationalism. I mean, I wouldn't say that this is my stand on it.
Right.
But sometimes it gives me the feeling that nationalism might be actually an anathema to conservatism. And why I say this is because the idea of nationalism is that the modern nation state is actually the driving force behind nationalism. Just for example,
Okay, I get your point.
Say Tejo Mahale, calling not calling it, and this blend of nationalism with religion actually makes it more spurious. So there is an article by Ashish Nandi, Nationalism Genuine and Spurious, and also his book on where he has done a psychoanalytic analysis of Rabindranath Tagore's text on nationalism, which is the illegitimacy of nationalism. He does actually make a point. I think we are, when we talk about the content of nationalism involved in conservatism, it actually isn't nationalism, but it is more of patriotism, which is actually the feeling which you have and the empathy which you have towards your territory. The idea of the whole idea of territoriality, and it doesn't stem out of the idea of a nation state as such.
Okay, fair enough. As I said, in India, the nation state arose out of nationalism, right? So for me, nationalism is not aggression, it's not xenophobia, right? I'm not coveting anybody else's territory or resources. So in that sense, if I want to use the English language, it's more cultural nationalism than anything else. So, the word nationalism in the social sciences discourse now means something quite different from what I'm meaning. So we are, two of us divided by a common language, because we look at it differently, In that sense, yes, Tagore was upset when Japan became modernized very rapidly. So she was straddling two things, became aggressive And Tagore writes how he's upset that an Asiatic power is making the same mistakes as the West. So he's very upset about it. And he used the word Asiatic today. You can't use the word, it's again it's a pejorative now. Tagore used the word Asiatic powers, you know. He suddenly saw nationalism as aggression, and that upset him. If nationalism is about culture and about growth, he was happy with it. And that's where his trouble starts after the 1904 defeat of Russia by the Japanese. So Tagore starts changing there. One, all of us welcomed in India the Japanese victory over Europe, as it was seen, Asia's first victory over Europe on a battlefield. But then as Japan subsequently started becoming more aggressive, and especially by the 20s and the late 20s, then Tagore recoiled from the word nationalism and wrote against it, you know. It upset him. But that is because, again, this nationalism was, to me at least, a perverted form of nationalism because it posited me against you. And that is what I'm uncomfortable with. To me, it is not me or you, it is me and you. So the or is the Hindi or, not the English or. Both. You know? I'm comfortable. Fine. You know? You're a Buddhist country, fine. You're not a Buddhist country, equally fine. You done, you know. You eat beef, okay. Eat your beef. I won't eat your beef. That's all. I'm not asking him to become vegetarian, which I am not. Somebody from the East cannot be a vegetarian, you see. For us, Durga Puja means non-vegetarian food.
I have two following questions.
Please.
But they are different.
Huh?
First is that considering the plurality and diversity of India, is it possible to imagine an ideological definition of conservatism without the notion of a nation state and just rather removing nationalism and inserting patriotism? And the second is that do you feel that like originally where conservatism flows from the works of Burke and others,
Yeah.
has nationalism replaced the role which religion would play in conservatism? And now considering again like the Indian space where actually religion has the most important role to play in our lives, can conservatism be redefined by actually giving more preference to religion rather than the nation state?
Okay, first point, I would not push the envelope on conservatism as an ideology. Because as I said, the more you codify it, the more you put yourself in a straitjacket. See, basically your traditions have allowed you the liberty to be examined and re-examined and reinvented all the time. Nothing is frozen in time. We are happy with change because the world has changed. Of course, I'll go in a car. Bhagwan Sri Ram never saw a car. I'll still use a car and not a chariot. I'm comfortable with social change. Today, not to accept gender equity or to talk about caste discrimination is something which is completely unacceptable to anybody, you know. So the fact that you change is a good sign. But as I said, the change must be a change which comes from a deep understanding of yourself, your society, and the external environment. So it's when the three are in harmony. So I'm looking for harmony. But as I said, in a national emergency, you realize that harmony is not possible. There you have to be decisive. As an exception, yes. But generally, to cope up with all these changes, it's far more sustainable, and you won't have a pushback if you do it through a process of developing consensus, give and take, arguments. You know, that's a far better form of it. Now, nationalism replacing religion, right? As I said, you know, our belief systems are very flexible, right? Very flexible belief system. In the same house, you can have somebody worshipping Shiva, somebody worshipping Vishnu, somebody worshipping nobody, somebody going to Sai Baba, somebody going to Shirdi, Sat Sai Baba versus Shirdi. We don't see that as interfering with our social life, you know. It does not interfere with our social life. The reason I prefer the word nationalism, and cultural nationalism, I'm fine with that. I don't care about political nationalism so much, is it brings us together, the commonalities, right? look at our languages. We speak different languages, yet a grammatical structure, even an alphabet. It took me precisely 1 day to learn the Tamil alphabet, exactly 1 day to learn the Tamil alphabet, right? Because, of course, there are differences. But so much of it is based on the same frameworks. For us, it's easy to flow from one to the other, right? The words are similar. Punjabi, you say noon for salt. Bhojpuri, I say noon for salt. Across the country, no? So, it enables us to live without questioning each other. You know? That is why. If religion becomes the key factor in holding us together, see, in the Western world where you had one religion in a country, Westphalia said that in each king will decide for his reign what the religion be, Protestantism or Catholicism. Once you have that as a rallying factor, then displacement of that and not replacing with it with something strong brings about massive amount of alienation and massive amounts of breakdown, you know. We fortunately have not had that kind of a problem. We have different kinds of problems. Our problems are actually more serious, but they're different, that's all. So I'll be comfortable. Patriotism I'm happy with. I don't, but patriotism sometimes appears as a negative word. Is patriotism against whom? So you're rallying your people against what? That is why patriotism makes me a little uncomfortable, but in a broader sense I'm comfortable with it. I'm not questioning you. I think you have a point. Yes, 1 and 2, yes. I'll take both of you together. Huh.
Sir,
And 3. And 3.
सर अगर वोट करने का टाइम आप अपने आप को कंजर्वेटिव मानना चाहिए या लिबरल मानना चाहिए आपके हिसाब से?
Now, reframe your question. Reframe. It is that English question, have you stopped beating your wife? Answer yes or no. जो जवाब दोगे फंसोगे. Right.
मीन्स जैसा सिंपल क्वेश्चन है, अगर मैं वोट करने जा रहा हूँ कहीं पर तो मुझे ये देखना चाहिए कि मैं जाति का कौन है, ये देखना चाहिए कि सबसे बढ़िया है।
देखो, कंजर्वेटिव जाति के बारे में नहीं है. हम तो जाति के खिलाफ हैं. हम तो कहीं ना जाति खराब है. जाति हमें विभाजित करता है.
लेकिन कंजर्वेटिव का आपने जैसा बताया, जितना मैं समझ पाया हूँ तो मैं अगला समझूंगा, इसका तो ये मतलब है कि आप मतलब अपने उसमें ज़्यादा
ना, हम जाति के एकदम खिलाफ हैं, क्योंकि जाति हमें विभाजित करता है. इसलिए हम लैंग्वेज पॉलिटिक्स में नहीं जा रहे हैं. हम विभाजन की तरफ नहीं जा रहे हैं. हम वो देख रहे हैं जो हमें जोड़ता है.
कंजर्वेटिव का मतलब ये हुआ
हाँ, जो हमें जोड़ता है, जो ऐसी क्या चीज़ हम सब में है जो हम मानते हैं कि वैलिड है हमारे लिए. भाई, दैट इज़ माई पॉइंट, यू नो. हमको साथ लेके चलना है, क्योंकि हमारा भाग्य एक साथ जुड़ा हुआ है. तुम मुझे ना भी पसंद आओ, साथ ही रहना है ना. जब साथ ही रहना है तो एक दूसरे को समझ लेना, समझ रहे हो ना. सो दैट इज़ वाई आई एम एक्सट्रीमली कंफर्टेबल इन तमिलनाडु. आई एम एक्सट्रीमली कंफर्टेबल इन कश्मीर. हमें कोई कष्ट नहीं है. At the back, and you also, na? Huh.
I did not get the first half of the lecture, but because the title is about Vajpayee's contribution.
That is exactly only 20%. 80% was about.
So I want to understand that one of the important stands of conservatism would be to, a strong emphasis on economic freedom. So I want to understand how did the founding philosophy of BJP, and Vajpayee would definitely be an architect of that, was Gandhian socialism. How did that happen? I mean, this is a historical question that I have.
ठीक है.
And the other is largely related to the idea of all the universal human rights values that
Yeah.
are there. So they are under challenge all across. I mean, they're not acceptable to all parts of the world, but they are still they are still enforced upon. I mean, applicable to everyone. That's how they are projected as. So I want to understand, what would you think would be the moments, or would that happen through leadership, or would that happen through only a popular struggle, that conservatism at an international level would gain any solid support? Then only this regime of universal human rights system that can be challenged, because right now there isn't that kind of challenge is not acceptable at all.
Okay.
Human rights are considered to be universal. I mean, and the meaning, the content of it is considered to be universal. However, nations don't accept it. There is a stand of cultural relativism which is there. So when would that, what do you think would be the, what will be the events or the,
Take it.
ideas? which
That's
would-
a very complicated one. Let me start with the first question. And so with that, I'll start with what you had also mentioned. Actually, in Indian economic thinking, even the freedom struggle was not about socialism. Please. It was not about socialism. Even then, see, who was the Bombay plan? Tata Birlas. Right? Big capitalists are against capitalism all the time. Big capitalists do not want people to enter. They want to raise the entry barriers all the time to get monopoly rights, In India, because of, and BJP Jansangh, where Vajpayee came from, unlike the Swatantra Party, was a party of the small capitalist, the trading class, not so much the entrepreneur class. These people have an instinctive, should I say, fear, anxiety about big business, because they are the receiving end of big business. Their prices are determined by them, so they lack the space to function. And therefore, when the Jansangh merged and became Janata Party, and Janata Party broke down and Bharatiya Jansangh was there, Vajpayee attempted, in my mind, and there I would say attempt was good, but the results were not good, to make the Bharatiya, now Janata Party, so they didn't revive the name Jansangh. They wanted to show this is a different party. It's a party of former congressmen also. You had Christians, you had Muslims there when they started. We had people from socialist background like Sushma Swaraj, former socialist. They said the party will be a party of the center. And therefore socialism by then, the only economist who objected to it, Brahmanand, was long dead, irrelevant. It was all a uniform thinking, group speak, group think about socialism. So they brought in the word socialism and brought in the word Gandhian to say this is different from Indira Gandhi's and Jawaharlal Nehru's socialism. This is a Gandhian socialism which is more trusteeship. It's about fear of the big business. See, Gandhian trusteeship was against a fear of the large industrialization, right? So we are trying to do it that way. So it was a compromise, and like most compromises are not a good idea, sometimes. Many times a good idea, so that is why. On the next question, I don't think that we should object to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. In fact, India was one of the movers of it in 1946-47, right? What we should object to is its misuse to target people, its lack of uniform applicability. I'll give a specific case. I was in the World Bank, and the issue of same-sex thing came up. So the World Bank board agreed after a lot of the hostile discussions, the Arabs opposed it, etc., that no, same-sex couples, partners would be given the same medical facilities as the ones who were married. We said, fine. I said, though in those days 377 was law in India, and I was speaking, I said, listen, I can understand it, and I have no, will you give visas to foreign nationals who bring along their same-sex spouse with you to the United States? If you're asking me to give the same facility, the other side is, will I be able to avail the facility? And the answer was no. Even today, the US does not give visas, G4 visas it is called, to the same specs. So in other words, we did the change in the name of Universal Declaration of Human Rights, but the benefit only went to the Americans who work in the World Bank, did not go to the non-Americans who work in the World Bank. So, it's not the Declaration of Human Rights which is at fault. It is the way that it is used that is at fault. So, so I would not carry a movement to go against it. I would in fact carry on a movement to try to see that the hypocrisies are, it's the hypocrisy which is at fault, and the forcing down. Huh?
Human rights are also turned into human wrongs.
Yeah.
When you see this, sorry, just to give one example, the father in Berlin sexually abused his own child, and the father was sent to prison according to criminal law, but according to civil law, the child was forced to see the perpetrator and visit him in prison because he should exercise his human right of having a family. I mean, that kind of...
That's why. Or in the Nordic countries, the way now children are snatched from their parents on the most illogical of grounds, that's an abuse of human rights. That is not human rights. So I agree with you, But I'm comfortable with human rights, because it's about human agency. It should not be a fetish. It should not be misused.
In such broad senses, like everyone should have a right of education. Now in India, if there are families which are cultural performers who perform on the streets, now
no,
as a state don't have the
I agree with you. Not just that. You know, in India, we don't have a single person who can deal with snake bites. Not a single person in India can deal with snake bites from poisonous snakes. Because we outlawed the profession of sapera. Maneka Gandhi brought in this thing. So we have outlawed saperas, made them normal citizens. As a result, we don't have any traditional knowledge to how to deal with snake bite. So your point is valid. It's the distortions that I'm talking about. There I agree with you. Sorry.
So I have two questions. First one is like, how do you draw a line between political nationalism and cultural nationalism? And do like politicians primarily use armed forces as a catalyst for political nationalism? The second question is, you mentioned about like we don't have a specific code of laws, but Manusmriti says Manusmriti is the text, like, and
One of the text.
yeah, one
Okay.
of the text. And conservatives, if they follow, some conservatives, if they follow that Manusmriti, they are going to replicate the same laws in today's society.
So, to start with the second question, that's what I said. You have to accept that codes of conduct which were valid 2,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago, may not be valid today. We have to accept that. But do I throw out everything with it? Or do I only throw out that part which is iniquitous? So you have to be careful what you do. If you reject everything and don't give anything in return, you've lost the Manusmriti, but you've not gained anything. It's like, you know, when you freed the bonded labor, which you should free, you should also back it up by giving the freed bonded labor the kind of state support in the beginning and social support to become a free agent, genuine free agent, right? So you must see it together. Just if you see only one aspect of it, you're in trouble. Yes, Manusmriti is terrible, but Manusmriti is mostly, incidentally, about how a ruler should govern. The part of human conduct is actually very small. Manusmriti, unfortunately, since Manusmriti is a gali today, nobody can cite the Manusmriti. Manusmriti is mostly about limited government, about the king's duty to his subjects. Manusmriti is actually more about that. But Manusmriti, that one description of their Purush, Brahmins from the head, Shudras from the feet, dump the Manusmriti. No, dump the bad parts about Manusmriti. Absolutely. There are distortions. We have to accept it. I'm happy with distorting it. Now, I don't draw too much of a line between political nationalism and cultural nationalism unless the political nationalism you define to make it me against you. If you are using that, then I'm uncomfortable with it. I do not covet anybody's territory. I do not covet anybody's land, territory, same thing, resources, nothing. So, and therefore the use of armed forces is limited to defending the country. It is only meant to defend the country. Our defense doctrines are genuinely defense doctrines. They're about layers in your territory, not about projection outside your territory, you know. So I'm comfortable with that. I'm comfortable with the fact that we have a smaller nuclear arsenal than Pakistan has. We feel it's adequate to defend ourselves. Since we are not interested in provoking a war, we are comfortable with a lower level of nuclear deterrence, as long as it's a deterrent. If it's not a deterrent, then you're in trouble. If you're into tactical nuclear missiles, you can use an actual battlefield, then I'm nervous, you know. So it's a matter of what you do, looking at the circumstances. If you have to kill a fly in this room, you will not bring a gun to fire at it. It won't help you, no. You may shoot somebody, you won't kill the fly, you know. So you must know what instrument to use where. That is my limited point.
Just a supplementary.
Yeah, please.
Like when India is in power, mostly we see a lot of armed forces used.
Did I say that the NDA is conservative?
No, I'm just asking you, like, when UP is in power, like, that time also surgical strikes were happening. But that time, like, the media is not.
That's a political point. See, politicians make points also, you know. They like to highlight certain things. UP highlighted something else. I said, listen, before you lose everybody and you and I are the only two people left in the room. And no, they're just political points. Politicians do these things. You must look at the totality of the experience. I said, if you take out one small part of anything, you can see distortions. Absolutely. Her point about somebody saying Taj Mahal is not Indian. You will find such people. I accept that. But by and large, we will not, you know. By and large, we do not. So that's why. Last question. I have a meeting in Delhi.
One more challenge to the issue of territory. I give you two examples. Number one, anywheres to explain the conflict between conservatism and liberalism. He feels the anywheres are the people educated in the US,
Right.
here and there, and the somewheres live in one place and they feel more territorial and more concerned about their small kind of world, and we also need to protect their view, basically, was his argument. Then the other point that I wanted to mention in respect to the challenge towards territory, I think if you had to move abroad, which God,
I lived 8 years of my life abroad.
oh, you did.
8 years of my life.
So I think if someone has a conservative view, you will have the same view regardless where you are. And I think conservatives, even if they have different conservative views, nevertheless, agree on some things. Let's say when it comes to heritage, there's the idea of global heritage, and people protect. Even if they are in let's say Austria, they want to protect, let's say, the monuments of Syria, and when they are destroyed by radical Islamic fundamentalists, then they feel they still want to help and rush to help. And this is in a way a very nice thing,
Right.
that the world comes together in a sense of brotherhood, which you even had at the time of Nur Jahan, when she was interested in art from, let's say, Europe, or you have, in the Red Fort, Fields, from Italy, and
Right.
or glasswork in Rajasthan. So anyway, that is a very beautiful example of, let's say, in material culture, where the world really comes together and shows just the curiosity and the love and interest in the whole world and brings it to your own house. So this is a kind of challenge towards territory.
But we also object to the Macronization of the world.
To the what mechanism?
McDonaldization
yes,
of the world.
that's
We object to that also. So, yes, exchanging cultural ideas is something very good, absolutely. But if I go anywhere in the world, I eat the same food.
Yeah.
It's a poorer world, it's a poorer world. So I think we should be happy about the fact that we approach each other with a sense of wonderment, sense of curiosity, and wanting to know. I approach you with the sense that I'm useless and you're very good. That's not a good situation either. Or that you're very bad and I'm very good. That's not a good situation either, So, you must have cultural exchanges. As I said, I've lived abroad 8 years. So I'm very comfortable with the world. But when I should land in Delhi and sit in the car, I would get a sense of reaching home. Even though my family was in Washington, D.C. and I was here alone staying in a hotel, I still felt I have come home. Now on the other point of, it's related to the same point, yes, you should be comfortable everywhere else, but you should know the difference also. When I eat the food, I should know the difference. So everywhere a person who's purely a global citizen, like the big Wall Street people, are not citizens anywhere. So they make me uncomfortable. In that sense, Europe giving up its religion in that sense, to me, is a Europe which has lost something. It has lost something. See the rich music of the churches. So much of modern art today that we know in the West came out from the churches. Of course, the churches is a terrible thing also. We have to understand both of it.
Even children are using their religious festivals
Yeah.
because, let's say, Father Christmas and banned in kindergartens
Yes,
in Vienna,
yes.
because they feel the Muslim children would
We're upset. I know.
That is ridiculous. If you
Yes.
have
That's what I'm saying. So being politically correct is equally scary. It's equally scary. Professor Subrajyoti Gupta, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, sir, for coming here.